Hi everyone. This morning I'm here talking to Angela Rojas from Fair Go for Australians. And I'm going to let Angela introduce herself a little bit and then we'll have a bit of a chat about what's coming up in the lead up to the state election. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you giving me a platform. So, my name is Angela Rojas, and I'm running for the upper house seat for Fair Go for Australians, the Legislative Council.
So how are you finding it so far? I know it's school holidays and probably yet to really get stuck into the campaign, but I know that I have seen you out and about in the community. So, what are you finding out in the community when you're speaking to people at the moment?
For for the past few years, I've been actively challenging, the sexually explicit books for children. So, but I started this journey as a mum. And I am not politically minded, but I could see a lot of issues leading up to this. And this is the first time, being a political candidate. I don't know if I saw this a few years ago when I started, but so I started giving, with a first deputation, I spoke at a local council meeting and started to bring awareness through all these places I've been speaking at, and I even campaigned a petition. And after 3 years of campaigning and doing public speaking, and I never spoke publicly before, especially about pornographic children's books. It was a very huge challenge to step up into this, and I was so nervous and anxious about it. I reckon I practiced my 5 minute council speech like 100 times just to try to get it within that 5 minute. And I started to notice a whole bunch of issues. So slowly campaigning this, you speak to a lot of parents afterwards, and it's not just about the books. And throughout this process too, I took an opportunity when it arose to become a classifier for film and games, and I had so much pushback. So I spoke to a lot of parents over the last few years, and I also touch on the topics about, the indoctrination of children in schools, especially around the ideologies, because I share similar concerns as a mum, and I've noticed things as well as a mum when my kids were in mainstream schools at the time, and then I went through a period of homeschooling, and now that my children are teenagers, they go to a Christian school. And so I've seen a lot of things myself, but I've also spoke to a lot of parents. So there's a lot of concerns around what's being taught in schools. And during this campaigning period, it's the major parties seem to have more funding and more opportunities to start campaigning, and we're a little bit more limited. But I trust. I mean, it's a fairly new party too. I mean, it's a new register, so like any business or new organization, it's going to take time to really take off. But I feel really confident in Sarah. Sarah's known my journey for a few years, and she asked me to run, and we align very well. And then I met Jake, and there are other candidates at some point we're going to announce.
Mhm.
But and in the background, I've written a few of my own policies around that, and it's more around the child protection and things like that, or even mental health, women's health, or NDIS, ways that we can help children and families. But I've also been speaking with my neighbours as well, and people within my own community too, and looking at all the issues that concern them.
So, do you want to do just a quick a snapshot of your advocacy for those books in the schools, just for people that weren't aware of what you did? What was the issue with the books that you were
Okay.
advocating against?
Well, what I learned is books in public libraries and in schools, none of them get classified by the Australian Classification Board at all. So, because they consider them to have educational merit, but it's not just sex instruction books. I'm not, there are some books on puberty and human reproduction which have good educational merit. I'm talking about the really explicit books. Some might be in schools, some might not be. And also the novels. We have found a few, fictional novels and graphic novels that are a bit more explicit. And since I've been campaigning, parents have been sending me stuff. So we're talking about books that go into topics on with instruction and with illustration, things like on how to do sexting, how to research pornography. They give instruction on different sex acts with imagery, and then some books go into far, the more ideologies as well. But I'm really concerned about the explicit ones. And then you've got your graphic novels. So a few years ago, I found there was one book. It was a Premier's Reading Challenge book for reception to Year 2. It was a sex instruction book. It was in the public libraries. And Premier's Reading Challenge, we know what the Reading Challenge is in South Australia. There's a selection number of books divided between different year levels, and children in schools or even homeschooling participants as well, they get to read X amount of books, and at the end of the challenge, they receive these medallions, these rewards. So this book was called The Amazing True Story of How Babies Are Made. Now, that book went into full penetrational intercourse with imagery and explains like how the penis goes inside the vagina and the thrusting movement and everything with images. And there might be some good components to that book, but for reception to Year 2, that's 5 to 7 years old.
Yeah.
It's not even part of the curriculum learning at that age. After exposing that book a few years ago, that book was deleted from the Premier's Reading Challenge list. So I did have a victory with that. But no one told me about it. I went back and I had a look and I realized, wow, they deleted it. But it took a number of exposure to a number of events to show people. And then there was another one where in the public libraries, there was a book series a few years ago called The Boys. And that's a graphic novel series. It's not educational, but there was some of those books that had depictions, really stylized depictions on sex parties, rape, and bestiality. And I went through this whole process and, tried to get this book removed from the public libraries or sent for classification review, because at the time it wasn't classified. And it turned out someone else interstate was able to get that book referred for classification review. And 3 out of the book series, 3 of the 6 came back R-rated, category 1. And I was able to, and that book sat in the graphic novels area right next to your Superman comic books.
That's amazing. Isn't that mind-blowing that we could have material in schools?
Well, that was a public library.
And even public libraries, though, that isn't classified, and they're not ensuring that our kids are reading safe material.
No, well, in schools, they're probably a little bit more selective on what they do display. Well, they should be. But in the public libraries, that they hold their position that everyone should be able to watch, read whatever they want, and it's up to the parents. And then they say, well, it's the parents' responsibility. But, I turned it around on them and said, well, public libraries are a public space, and you can't have, by law, in South Australia, you cannot put on public display an R-rated book that's not wrapped and sealed. It must be wrapped and sealed, and you can't sell. And sell means, by definition in the legislation, sale is to let and hire as well. So they did remove just the category 1 books, the R-rated books. And more recently, after a 3-year campaign, I sat with the library board, a couple of members. I won't say who they are. They've asked me not to say who they are. And we had an honest discussion. And at that time, when I met with them recently, I wasn't classified. When I did the challenges, I wasn't at that time. And they agreed, because there was no shelf consistency. Some libraries were putting books in different shelving locations, some in the children's and teens area, and some with the same book in the adults areas or parenting collections. So they agreed to consistent age shelf locations across all of South Australia. They're considering a young adult section for M and MA equivalent books, and any book that should be submitted for classification review, they will ensure that the vendors, because it's the vendors or the distributors' responsibility, that they submit the books for classification review. And then if they come back classified, then they will follow the legislation, accordingly. But it took 3 years to campaign it, and what I found was not one Labor or Greens member was willing to speak with me. A few Liberals were willing to speak and work with me, but it felt more superficial, the support, and I realised I had to really do it myself. And then when it comes to the education, what I found was there are teacher resources, even videos. A lot of teacher resource videos do not get classified by the Australian Classification Board. Plus, there's other issues. So, people talk about sex education. Well, let's talk about comprehensive sexuality education. In South Australia, we've got the Respectful Relationships program and the Keeping Children Safe program, Keeping Kids Safe program. The Keeping Kids Safe or Keeping Schools program, parts of it is compulsory, but not all of it is. But the Respectful Relationships program isn't. And some parents like to opt their children out of certain parts of that curriculum, and they're being told it's mandatory. Well, it's not mandatory. You can actually write a letter to your children's school and withdraw your child out. And then when parents ask for the curriculum content because they want to see it, teachers are hiding behind copyright laws, and they won't give out the information. And we've even tested this out through freedom of information requests. So it's, there's a lot of boundaries and lots of legislation that has been altered in with all this. And then we had, was it a year or so ago with that Renmark incident in that high school where the incest and bestiality was taught by a third-party provider with that teacher supervision. So things are happening. And I've also heard from teachers when I was campaigning my petition, I was door knocking, and I spoke to a teacher who taught at a high school, but he was concerned about one book. I mean, high school's 12-year-olds and up because it's year 7. And he described one book to me that was in the school he was concerned about called Icebreaker. And he said it had 50 Shades of Grey content in it. And this was just a regular novel. And I borrowed the book, and it was so highly sexualized that the sex scene, even though it was written, it was I've never, read 50 Shades of Grey before, but it was very descriptive. And I wrote to the minister at the time, and, he assured me that that book has never been in the Australian school. So they must have pulled it out maybe, but,
isn't it interesting that we have like movies and series and things like that are all classified, and certain things kids can't or shouldn't watch, but then all of a sudden we have this written into books that is then allowed to go into school so kids can read it. We just don't want them to watch it.
I did a bit of a deep dive. I wanted to know, how does a explicit book manuscript end up on the book shelves unrestricted to children? Yeah. And it does stem back to what parents don't realize is librarians don't catalog books. They add books to their collections. It's the publishers and distributors that internally catalog books. They select the target audiences. And we're talking about international publishing companies. So you've got places like in the United States, they don't have classification laws. They have motion picture laws that might, or not really laws. Classification there is optional. It's not mandatory. So with their motion pictures, they give classification ratings for movies and games. And other countries might have similar things. Australia is probably one of the only countries that actually do classify books, if especially the adult magazines, but it's not mandatory. And there are so many books all the time. Then you've got your self-publishing, and so, and what happens is librarians, even schools, when they order books through what's called a standing book ordering system. So it's the distributors that pre-select books in packs, and then they get sent to the schools and libraries, and then they get added into the collections. So it's really up to the librarians to really look at the books and select them properly. And I think there are gaps here and there that some books get overlooked.
Has the education minister taken any interest in what's these books and what's been going on in the school?
He keeps reassuring me that that everything is age appropriate. What he calls age appropriate and what I call age appropriate are two different things. We the left have a mindset that children need to know more education, and it'll keep them safer. So what when I was at school, when I was in year 9 and 10, what I learned in year 9 and 10 around sex education, it was on human reproduction, puberty, and a bit of sexual health.
Yeah.
But what kids of today are learning at that equivalent is in primary school in years 5 and 6, and then they go into sexual activity. And I've had a look at the Respectful Relationships program, and it starts from age 3 to so that's that kindy age, yeah, to year 12. And they're supposed to teach at at the right ages, but this program starts at that. But it says in there, in order for them to teach consent, which is a big thing around the safety part, they must also teach about sexual pleasure. It's written in that document. So I can't tell you right now without going into it and what year levels they teach what, but we know that they're starting to introduce the idea of consent when it comes to childcare. We hear stories like that they got to ask babies for permission to change their nappies. So they start to introduce the idea of consent. They also introduce the idea in this curriculum that about keeping secrets. And when you look further into the duty of care of a school or a childcare or kindy, and especially with the gender ideology, and this is what I'm concerned about, is under duty of care, if a parent doesn't affirm a child's chosen gender, the school can socially transition a child without the parent consent. They can change their enrollment form, and they can change, start calling your daughter a male name without the parent, if the parent doesn't agree with it, because to them it's they can give them doctor's appointments, they can see psychology in schools. There's so many things that happen behind the scenes, and it's not just me saying this for my own opinion.
But from what age are you saying they can do that?
The programs start from age 3, so I think.
But there's no minimum age for them doing that, intervening and doing that. No. Overturning a parent's decision. It's not like 16 where your child can get their own Medicare card and go to the doctor. It's just like it's just whenever.
Yeah, so there's a social transitioning is when they start, identifying a certain way, and it's just using a different name or, whatever gender. But then you've got the physical transition, which is different.
Sure.
There's probably not a huge amount of children that have gone down that road of puberty blockers in South Australia. It's very small, and all the social or the surgical procedures, it's very small in that regard for under 18s. But the social transition, yes, we've even heard of people, children identifying as furries, identifying as cats, and all sorts of, you know, crazy
It's a
things.
real worry when we see more and more regulations that take away, I guess, our power as parents, um,
Yep.
our rights for our kids. And it's quite hypocritical as well because, I see kids that come into perhaps child protection,
Yep.
and then you see the authority becomes the guardian, and they get to voice and make every decision, every decision. But then we have genuine parents who have
Yep.
birthed and raised children who are having their rights taken away.
Well, when we sign an enrollment form for your child, for any, whether it's childcare, kindy, or school, you agree, and to this, there's a Latin term that's used called in loco parentis,
Yes.
means in place of the parent.
Mhm.
And essentially, I believe that teachers or educators, people in those positions, are being told that they essentially take the role of the parent in place of the parent. That's what it means, in place of the parent. And then you've got that. Yes, I think that's what's happening, and it's like this thing of the government is in control of the child, or they have to help
Yeah.
raise the children. But when you look at the Royal Commission into child sexual abuse, into the recommendations, they're supposed to take on considerations that the parents are the primary and primarily responsible for the upbringing of their children, and they're supposed to follow the parents and families'
Yeah.
beliefs and morals and values and
I think
respect.
if I signed that form, as far as I'm concerned, I'm signing that form for my child at school, and that parenting in place of me
Yep.
would allow them to, you ring an ambulance straight away. If they need a doctor, you get them help straight away. You show them empathy and care when they're at school. That's the type of parenting in place of me that I would be expecting that you give that child. I wouldn't, and I would assume most people signing that form wouldn't be signing it going, okay, you take over, and against any of my parenting views, you can do whatever you like with my child. I don't think too many people would be thinking that that's what they're
No,
signing.
no. So it's probably not a huge thing. There's probably not a big problem in South Australia, but we've seen it in other states. And I'm being over the years, I've connected with other people taking on the same fight in Victoria and New South Wales and Western Australia and other parts of Australia, Queensland, and we've especially in Victoria, it's more strict. I mean, parents can actually get arrested in Victoria if they don't affirm a child's gender. And I've heard of horrific stories, and states tend to follow similar trends.
Mm.
But I am very concerned about where South Australia could be heading. Even if it's only a small thing at the moment, it still exists. And that's the problem. The fact that it's available in that way. I mean, I've heard of an instance a couple of years ago where in an all girls school, there was one biological boy attending an all girls school, and this boy, obviously identifies as a female, is able to use the female bathrooms, the female locker rooms. If they go on camps, would probably share a dormitory. Like, there's so many issues around different things, and I get every child. I don't, take pleasure in. I'm not homophobic or transphobic in any way. I mean, children experience real dysphoria, but we got to think about everyone as well and the safety of everyone. And it's when you hear the odd thing that happens here and there. I mean, teachers are being sexually harassed by students, and students at a younger age are sexually harassing other students. And it's happening in primary school now. It's not just high school anymore.
That, and that's really scary, isn't it? Because where has that come from? Because growing up, that was we didn't see any of that.
No,
That'd be the last thing on our minds. We're all so busy being kids and running around the playground, and I don't remember anything like that at school growing up. So, seeing what I see coming into child protection as well,
yeah,
and what has been done to them, and what some of those children do to other children, I I just don't understand where has it come from? How has it been? I say enabled because things don't just change overnight. We don't shift from here in the community to here overnight. Something has happened along the way. So, we've got to figure out what went wrong. But I
a
think
lot of legislation changes over the years. I'll tell you that.
exactly, and people
Yeah,
interfering with parenting. I don't think it's anyone's business how someone's raising their kids, as long as their kids are all healthy,
yes,
all their basic needs are all being met, they're going to school, they're happy. No one should be interfering in parenting until there's a child at risk or being harmed. That's my belief. You raise your kids however you like, but let's just all make sure we raise them to be nice human beings and to be
that's
kind,
right.
you know?
There's a sense of activism that comes with these agendas. So it's even I've seen some of the learning material, the teacher resources. So that there might be, and I think this might be for a bit older age groups or even middle school age, where there might be an activity like, and I read this and I thought, wow, this is weird. Um, Besides the talking about, conversations children might have on, or older children, porn world versus real world sex, and why do children have to have porn literacy? I have no idea. But also maybe a bit younger age where they might say, imagine you have the genitals of a different sex, or imagine you're a non-binary alien, and how would your Facebook page look like? How would you come out? So social justices has been ramped up,
Yeah.
and it's been introduced as a whole school approach, which means in English they'll add more literature on that would include different diversity and social justices history, that they include more of it. Um, Somehow they bring it up in maths and science, and it comes across, and health and well-being. So it comes across all topics, all social justices as well. And I'm okay with all sorts of diverse backgrounds and everything like that. But when it comes, and then there's so many days that they celebrate all these different things, and I think it gets pushed more. I mean, only 5 to 8% of people of in South Australia, I believe, are LGBT or LGB. So it's only a small minority of people, and in today's time, we're very inclusive. Not like years ago where they had a hard time, and I understand that. But I like to separate the TQ, and I call them a cult, and I don't care if I get slack for that. But there is you got to separate the people who are actively trying to push, and then there's some people who have genuine concern about dysphoria, who have genuine concern with it. They want to support their child. You want to be a good person. You want to be inclusive. And that's fine. But then there's people that really try to push it more than others, and we're seeing that go through. I mean, it's only a small minority of people who identify a different gender, or who might have a different orientation, and there seems to be too much focus on personalities, and
I think,
I just want children to focus on what they need to learn. Let's improve on our math skills, our history, our English. Let's improve on what school's meant to teach us, and not everything else. There's so much focus on
I
some
think
on these
what
people.
what I see is that we're pushing so much stuff onto kids, and you shouldn't need to do that to teach acceptance. And I hear
Mm.
a lot of people saying, well, we have to do that so that they don't bully, or, as they get older, they're not judging people. But I don't, I think the focus has really shifted away from teaching kids acceptance, accepting each other, and teaching them to be kind. It doesn't matter what color you are, what sexuality you are. Like, I don't care. I don't like mean people. That's what I don't like.
They
That's
they
what we
take
should
this
be teaching.
they take this gender neutral approach, but they do it under the guise of protecting women under domestic violence and things like that. Teaching children, teaching children how to be respectful in relationships, so it stops the domestic violence and things like that. And I just want to touch on this because I've reflected about. I've left my ex-husband because of domestic violence situation, and I reflected. And I thought nothing about what I experienced or he experienced that was projected onto me had nothing to do with gender, sexuality at all. And if he had learned back then about respecting people's genders and gender roles or sexual orientation, had I don't think it would make any difference if he had learned about different genders to his to what I experienced in the relationship. It had nothing to do with it. So I can't see how that would improve those sorts of situations. So it seems like they're just finding ways. They guise everything under safety. And I get some of the concern, but I think it's something that's really being pushed more than anything. And I want to see Australian kids, South Australian kids thrive. And there's so much. What I've noticed in my area, and it's happening in other areas, there's so much youth crime that's happening too now. You know, we've moved a few times, and the schools that they've been to, there's from time to time there's always been police attendance for whatever reasons. My children have also experienced bullying, and there's so many families around. When I've spoken to people in the areas where there's you know there's gangs, there's fights that and kids love to record fights and post stuff and things like that, and it's happening a lot younger age. And then social media is what's being blamed for it, and I don't think restricting children from social media is always the best thing. I mean, our children grow up in a digital world; they're digital native, so we have to help them navigate the digital world, not ban them from it. Help them be responsible, um, and help them focus on other areas of their life, on meaningful things of their life, or whatever. And parents, we grew up giving our children tablets and phones, and they grew and we're being lazy as parents sometimes too, because we're all busy. And that's just the way things are, because we need nowadays we need two people to run a household or to pay for a household. And so it's not like not one person can pay a mortgage anymore or pay rent. You need both partners, and everyone's too busy to be involved or to oversee what's happening. So
I was
it's
I was at the social media summit, and I heard the stories from the parents who had lost their children
yeah,
to bullying, and it's horrific.
it is.
Um, but what I understand, okay, so they've banned it. Now I was one of the mean mums. In our house there were no phones until they were I think 14, 15, and they got a part-time job. I used to send one of my phones with them if
Yep.
they needed to ring me, if they finished work early. So they didn't actually get their own phones until they were about 15 or something.
Yeah.
So that also meant, and every day they would come home from school with their laptops, and I would take their laptops away from them. They would have so much time in the evening. The laptops would come away and they would go to my bedroom. Then when they did get their phones, they would get home from work, have a short time to text their friends or talk to friends. Then I would take their phones away. Even now, my kids are older teens. Their phones and laptops still go in my bedroom every night.
Mm.
I can't monitor everything they do on there and watch everything. Um, but I also know that they didn't get social media accounts until just really recently, last year perhaps.
Yeah.
Um, and they're not on every platform. They're not on all the time. Yes, they use the chats. Um, I didn't hear any of that, the repercussions for the bad behavior on social media being addressed at the summit. We only looked at let's just take it away and then we're done with it. There's nothing being done to address people's behavior, whether it's children or adults. And I see that whether it's in social media, whether it's in schools, staff behavior, whether it's in government departments, their behavior, other staff behavior. People are abusing power, people are being mean, they're doing to people because they can. And at least governments, I know it's only Australia, but there has to be more done to target the bad behavior on social media. I mean, I've been targeted. I'm no stranger to people out there
Yes.
targeting me on social media. And you can take those complaints and snapshots, that people send you and say, gosh, look at this, look what people are doing. Well, you can send them off to wherever you like, and everybody goes, oh, yeah, we can't do anything about that. That's what we should be addressing is the people targeting people,
Mm.
because it wasn't the social media platform that led to children taking their lives.
No.
That was the equipment. It was the people who were using that and
That's
what
right.
they were doing with it that has impacted on so many people. That's what I believe, needs to be addressed.
And like myself, like you, I've my girls are 14, 15, and 16 years old now, and they've only just got phones more recently. But years ago, when I felt they were old enough and they were curious about social media, I made them watch this. It was on Netflix. There was a documentary called The Social Dilemma, and I put it was M-rated, so I sat with them and I put the different parts. So I made them aware about digital footprints and bullying and cyberbullying, and I spoke to them, and being I'm very aware even on the online stuff. I've said to my girls in the school holidays they might play online with friends on certain games, and I say, well, because they're old enough now, so just be careful who you are online with. As long as it's only your friends or your cousins or whatever, no one else. You're not allowed to go to any chat rooms with no one. You have to tell me what goes on, because I've told them enough in a way that they understand. And I trust my girls. I don't trust other people sometimes.
Exactly. Mhm.
But they are good girls, and we have open conversations, even conversations that I'm not ready to have, because they're so, they're at an age where they're interested in boys, and they ask all sorts of questions, and I would have that open and honest conversation with them, and I believe my girls feel safe enough to approach me on those. But and my girls have sometimes say, oh, my 16-year-old, she saw a video that popped up on YouTube, and she goes, I wish I didn't go down that rabbit hole. But she didn't explicitly look for that particular video. It was something that popped up, and she wished she never saw it. But we had this really long discussion about it. And I said, well, let's clear your history so it doesn't come up again, and let's change your settings and this and that. But she felt comfortable enough to, and I said, well, how do you feel? Why do you feel that way? And we worked through it, and she felt better afterwards. But so I help guide my children become self-aware. Um, but and that even at primary school, I was fully aware. My girls are all on the autism spectrum. They're high functioning, I don't use that term very loosely, but they know, they have an awareness. They have some awareness on social issues, and some they don't.
Yeah.
And I've had to help them for a long time, help them navigate those social cues and everything like that. Because you got occupational therapy and speech therapy in the early years, so you spend a lot more time. And now they have a very good awareness of it, and they're becoming a lot better. So I've had to help them in the early stages, and it's not easy as a parent, even if they're not on the spectrum, you know. But we have to be, a lot of parents, when it comes to education, a lot of them just automatically trust the teachers and schools. And we're hearing cases where, childcare centres or in schools where a teacher will be arrested for, child sexual abuse material, or whatever the case is. A lot more is coming up from time to time, but we have automatic, um, trust with the schools. And there's something I would like to bring up with Fair Go is look at policies or ways of ensuring that teachers or people who enter into those fields, we have are properly investigated, are properly looked at, but also to bring in more supports for teachers. There's a lot more students in mainstream classes who don't qualify for special needs, who are on the spectrum, because they don't have an intellectual disability. They're just on the spectrum or have some difficulties. So we need more SSO supports and things like that. So that's something I want to look at. But we need to look at the curriculum. I want to give parents more oversight and more transparency as well. So I support Sarah. I know she's spoken about that in the past. So that's something where I align with.
What
The,
about
yep.
we see so many kids coming out of school, and not all kids live in homes where they're taught to cook and look after a house or life skills. And again, years ago, when most of us were all at school, we did things like home economics. Home economics for me, I think we had 3 terms at the time. And one, you would be in the kitchen area and you would be cooking, learning how to prepare basic meals and that whole measuring of ingredients and shopping. Um, the next term would be things like sewing
Yep.
and just putting on a button and little things like that.
Making that pencil case.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh. And then the third one I really enjoyed because we did almost like a mini, I think they even called it business studies or something.
Yep.
And so kids learnt how to address envelopes, how to write letters properly. What did profit and loss look like? What was tax?
Yep.
What did it mean to be doing tax and tax returns? And then at the same time, there's also tech studies where you
Yes.
would go in there and you'd do some woodwork,
Yep.
and then the next one you do maybe metal work. The
Yep.
next one we were pulling lawnmower engines apart
Yep.
and just learning the basics for those things. Our kids aren't doing that anymore.
No, I found that in high school it's more of an optional type. They don't call it home ec anymore. I can't remember what they call it. Food tech,
Yeah.
food tech. They might do. Depends. Some primary schools might do a bit of cooking here and there. The primary school that my children went to was fairly good. They were growing their own veggies and things like that. And they had chickens. They had what's called a food education centre, where they cooked a bit, but it wasn't a huge part of the curriculum. But I agree with you. There needs to be more of those everyday life skills. When I homeschooled my girls and I was teaching my girls about algebra, because they don't teach with algebra, people think, well, what's the point of teaching it? Well, they don't realise that every day algebra is learning how to, balance the bookwork, whether it's in your own home or whether it's in a job role. That's what algebra is. I earn X amount income versus y amount of expenses, and this is the answer I get. That's what algebra is. It's everyday life, but it's made to sound so confusing. But I when I homeschooled for that period of time, I played shop. We got real money in a coin box, and one thing I taught them was, all right, let's put a price per fruit per kilo. We use scales. I said, this is how much this costs, that costs, that costs. Let's calculate how much it would be. Let's add it all up, and then let's play shop. And then after that, we did the following week where we said that we're going to decorate the curtains. This is how much this curtain costs, that curtain costs. We're going to measure the windows, get the area size, and we're going to say, all right, curtains cost per linear meter. I explained what that was. And I taught them, real life skills. And then we did real cooking and sewing. I included sewing when I was homeschooling. So I wanted to give them that practical. But you're right, we do need to bring, and not just for the girls, but for boys as well. I think we need it for everyone. When I was in high school, I did woodwork. I made a coffee table as well. So there's different, and I loved, home ec. They were my two favorite subjects when I was in high school. But sewing seems to be one of those things where if in the high school is if there's enough students that show interest, and this is an independent school, if enough students, then they might bring it in as an option. But I agree, there should be, and I've seen those videos where children in kindy from China, they're learning these life skills as regular everyday play. It's not like they're playing, they're actually doing stuff. They're learning how to sew, and they're learning how to cook and clean and tidy up. And even in Japan, it's up to the students to clean the classrooms at the end. So they're learning real life skills.
Yep.
And that's where they're advanced in the early years. And they're taught how to respect other people, and they practice everything, and not just in role play, but in everyday life. And they serve each other meals. There's certain models that we can look at. I would love to explore all of those skills. Even physical education was different too.
Yeah, it was. And especially at a time now when there is such a focus on electronic devices for our young people, I think it's so important that they go back in and look at the school. So when we had sports day, the entire school was at sports day. The entire school participated. I've seen sports day in some schools be cut down to, okay, we're going to do some, heats where this week we're going to pick who's the best at this. And then on sports day, those people, the cream of the crop, are going to compete in sports day. And everybody else will sit around and watch. Whereas it used to be that everybody did, and
Well,
everyone was there.
on the other spectrum, if everyone participates, everyone gets a participation award.
Yeah.
So it's either one extreme or the other.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
remember sports day in primary school doing the march.
Yeah.
And all that.
Yep.
And you think back and you think, wow, that made it fun. That made it real. But
it's all the kids back then were united,
yes,
and everyone knew each other. Something happened to one kid, everybody knew. And
yes,
even the families were more united, I think. There was more of a social connection. And we've lost so much of what was really good. And instead of looking, I don't think any government has been good at identifying something that is not working well at the detriment of our community.
yeah,
And then saying, do you know what? I'm hearing from all these people, these families and parents and advocates saying this is not working and we're not seeing good outcomes, but they're not willing to stop something, scrap it and start fresh. That's what I'm not seeing.
no. I mean, the public high school in my area, my girls went there for a few weeks before changing and going back to homeschooling. We had a lot of issues, but I went to bring back the uniform after a period of time to donate back. And when I went back, I noticed that, even that school had bars around it, like a electronic fence and two-way intercom doors because of for security reasons. I've never seen that before. Like, I understand that the families are doing it hard, some areas more than others. And there's so many issues in our communities that are not being addressed. They're getting worse.
Yeah. And it's sad, isn't it? So we put up higher fences, we lock the school gates, but
Yes.
we're still not addressing the problem.
No, they think more education is better. No, it's not. It's probably, you tell a child when they're young, don't play with fire, but then you show them how to light a match and say, don't do it. We're just showing you how
Yeah.
to light a fire, but you're legally not allowed to do it. But they're going to try it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got to do it at the right time. You children indicate when they're ready. They'll start asking when they're curious at the right time. And as a parent, when they're how much information you want to give them, how you want to teach them in accordance to your values. And I think certain things need to be left out of the schools and left up to the parents so we can focus on more life skills. Like you said, even how to write a letter by hand or, rather than emails. I mean, emails years ago, probably emails were sent more by, in the letterhead form, even that. Now it's more like instant messaging, it's not as formal anymore. And we don't have the same sort of skills. I remember, kids, I don't know if they still do it, but, when I was a kid, you had to get a pen license. We had to learn
Yeah.
um, cursive and things like that, or linking. I think that's what they called it. I was sort of in that stages of getting out of that. Now it's a lot of it's done electronically. Thankfully, I mean, where my children go to a school, they do encourage more handwritten stuff, but a lot of schools don't care as long as a child is participating in the activities now, and they're trying to increase the participation rate in lessons more than the outcome itself. And they're not addressing root issues. There's a lot of issues, even the way the classrooms are set up. For years ago, when they were in primary school, I volunteered as a parent in the classrooms. I did my ancillary training, so I learned how to become an SSO. Did that course in education support, and I volunteered in the libraries and in the special needs classes. But in the normal classrooms, you notice that schools, student desks are not facing the front anymore. They're like dining rooms. All children are facing each other, so they're more likely to talk, which is good for group activities, but it's a lot more louder and it's a lot harder. I've seen, students, teachers struggle, and students can't see the whiteboard, not blackboard anymore. They can't see the board anymore, or electronic board. Um, I think that, separating students, my girls excelled during the exam times because there was no noise,
Mhm.
and they were facing forward and they were individual. And I think we need to get back to those sorts of basics, bring some of the old fashioned way of learning. They've also removed a lot of the rote learning. They they don't use rote learning like they did years ago.
Yeah. And we used to have the rows of desks, like you're saying, and then you'd do group work, and the kids would all get up and enjoy, like everyone quick get up and turn your desk around and
Yeah.
work together. It was no big issue. So should you be elected? And I love the Legislative Council. I've spent a lot of time in there. We do have some good members of Parliament who have been willing to work with a lot of us on child protection issues, particularly. Um, Unfortunately, government just didn't come to the party. Um, so I've seen the change that having good people in there, particularly independents and minor parties, um, and I believe there needs to be a really good balance of people in there. So what types of things would you be sort of wanting to focus on, should you be elected?
Yes.
And what are you hoping to be able to push and help change when you do get in there?
I would like to see one more transparency when it comes to education, what teachers are education children. I like to see things age appropriate, and um, things taught in biological truth, and more focus on everyday, like what we've just spoken about, giving children real skills and help, and assisting teachers, making the classrooms, helping families. So there's different, areas of different reasons, that different hardships, whether it's homelessness, domestic violence, mental health. Um, I support Sarah on the pro-life stuff. I'm not the anti-abortion. I think I look at the issues, and I've spoken to different women who who are facing termination of pregnancy because they have financial issues or they have mental health issues. I think if we can support those families and those women in ways that they might choose differently. They might want to keep the pregnancy rather than be forced to terminate. So I would like to support the women more. But, and also, I don't agree with the no jab, no play. I think that should be scrapped. When my children did speech therapy before they went to school, before they would go to kindy, they went into kindy and childcare, but they went to kindy earlier because of speech therapy, and it was necessary for their social development and for their speech development. And parents shouldn't have to cross a threshold where they've been coerced into, or feeling like they've been coerced or told it's mandatory for the child to have a jab, or they can't attend those services. When a child's sick, whether they're jabbed or not, and I remember, because my kids were in childcare, they were pulled out if there was an outbreak, or if there was a flu, or if they had any sort of um, illness. If they had a temperature, you pulled your child out until they felt better anyway. So whether they were jabbed or not, they're still contained and got over those illnesses. So I don't think parents should feel like they have to be. It's mandatory for their child to be jabbed in order to get those services, especially in a public system. But so there's a number of those sorts of things that I personally like to focus on. But I would like to look at, there's so many different things: homelessness, housing. There's issues around public housing, especially, I think there's like a 5-year long wait for NDIS housing in South Australia, and maybe a 20-year wait for public housing. And that's contributing to the overall housing crisis. I mean, everyone's looking for affordable housing, and whether it's rent or buying, and it's putting pressure on a lot of people. So there's a number of things I would like to look at with Fair Go. And hospitals. For a while, I lived in regional South Australia. I lived in the York Peninsula, and I noticed back then, and it's the same still now, there were no public doctors, and a lot of people. So to get an appointment with a GP back then, you had to wait 2 weeks for a regular appointment, or you go in as an emergency. And if you went to the hospital at Wallaroo, you had to be admitted in order to receive any medical. Children, they get. Normally, you can take them to the women's and children's. I just can't think of the word at the moment. A bulk build.
Yeah.
Back then, if you saw a private doctor, you don't get bulk. Children didn't always get bulk billed back then, and you have to, and then there's those community buses. It's really good. They pick up people at different whatever reasons, and they take them, the health bus. They take them to Adelaide and do those. But I would like to give more support to people in regional areas where they could have more specialised treatments and services available in all regional South Australia as well, so medical, and that hopefully takes the pressure off of our city clinics as well. So there's a number of different things. And then NDIS, I like to give, or allied health, I like to bring, maybe more allied health services to schools to help children. And there's ways to do that that shouldn't be too hard. And I've written a few policies. I'm just waiting for everything to be approved so we can start, sharing these policies out there. But I'm in the works of writing all of these up. But my main passion is more about children and families. If we can help the family structure, and children especially, when they grow up, we think about the long view. What world, if we've got these issues now in today's world and we don't do anything about it, what world will they inherit? Even if your life is comfortable now, think about the world that they're going to inherit. Because a lot of times people can turn around and say, well, I'm happy with my life at the moment. There's no point, or what can I do about it? Think about where the world is going. And, we need to have a bit of more of a community mindset as well. But I want to try to do what I can. And I want to keep them honest. I want to question. I've been, I will poke. I will do whatever I need to do. I'll be a thorn in their side, but I will get to the bottom, and I'll keep them honest in the top level. I will investigate, budgets and really analyze. I love doing all that sort of stuff. So, and I'll be as authentic and truthful as I can, but I want to make sure that there's honesty and transparency.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say keeping them honest. And I've had a lot of people talking to me about politics, obviously. And I try to get to as many candidates' launches as I can to talk to them and see what it is that they're wanting to do for the community. And there's always people in the crowd that ask the questions or think that only Labor and Liberal can ever form government, and that you have to vote for Labor or Liberal. And they don't understand that putting, someone, maybe an independent or a minor party at 1, 2, 3, everybody accuses parties of controlling their votes and preferences. And people still don't seem to understand that. Don't look at those forms that they're handing you. If you want to look at it and just see who are the people running, do that. But you don't have to copy what it says on that form. Everyone should be looking for the candidates who are running for their local seat and having a look and saying, well, okay, have they made themselves accessible for the last few years? Have I been able to get a meeting with them? Have they been interested in the things that I think are important and the community are finding tough? Have a look at the outcomes. When are they around? Do they only turn up when the media's there, or when they're going to promise some more money for the next term, even though they've let you suffer for the last one? Like, people need to do their homework and then have a look at the Legislative Council. Now, I know people that I did scrutineering for the federal election, supported a local independent member. People get that big piece of paper and they just complain. Some people scribble it out. They do donkey votes. When you do that, I see that you've just voted for the major party that's just won. So the people you're complaining about, you've really just allowed them another vote because you didn't vote against them. When they get that big form, they should look at that and say, wow, I've now got an opportunity to try and pick the absolute best candidates to represent us in the Legislative Council, where these people can help stop bills, they can propose amendments, they can push bills. Like this, people don't understand that this is where everything we look at and touch in our community stems from.
Yeah, so, and you're spot on. First of all, parties don't preference. They tell people how they want people to preference, but as a voter, you preference.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what people need to understand. Get to know your candidates and who you want to preference, who aligns with you and your values, and vote accordingly. Vote according to your own preferences. Get to know the people that you want to represent you. And, and the thing about having an independent come in, the major parties will be forced to negotiate with the independents. And and Sarah, she's the only one that she was, well, not the only one, but she was One Nation. Now she's on her own. She's created her own party, but she's put through legislation that has passed. It's not that she hasn't done anything at all. She's made some changes as one person, one independent. So it's not impossible to make changes. Um, so we don't have to, Fair Go doesn't have to form government, but we can have enough influence to make changes. And that's the main thing. It's not that she's there doing nothing. Um, so it's possible for change and with independence. So get to know your candidates, preference likewise. I've also scrutinized, and I agree with you. Don't waste your votes. Don't do those donkey votes. Don't number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in those sorts of orders. You don't have to follow the how to vote cards. They're just recommendations that parties will give you. If you want to follow them, you can, but meet and get involved if you can, and you feel like you want to make change where you don't know what to do. Align yourself with a person that you want to represent, and volunteer and help them out. Be active in that front and do what you can. There's no pressure to volunteer too much. I won't keep you too much more longer because we've been speaking for a long time, but and the only thing I want to say, and don't be stupid when you and you don't want to vote. Don't draw dick pics and all sorts of stuff. I've seen that those cards, even if you voted and you draw a picture like that, they don't get counted.
No.
If you start drawing after you voted, they won't count those votes. So use your votes properly. That's your power. I think there was over 100,000 invalid votes.
I saw a huge stack of those for the federal election.
Yes.
The stack was way up there, with the Labor and Liberal piles. And I just thought, if I don't know, I've not met anyone yet that has said to me, life's really easy at the moment. Myself, my family, my kids, my extended family, no one's complaining. Life's great. So everyone's complaining about something. Everyone's complaining about cost of living, electricity bills. I know so many people complaining still that nothing has changed for the people in child protection. They might do things, but they're not listening, and they're not doing the things that need to change for our kids and our families and our carers. So all of these people who are stressed, they're complaining, they're working 2 or 3 jobs, they don't get to spend much time with their kids. Don't waste your vote. You're obviously not happy.
Yes.
So vote for something totally different and give it a go. Vote for an independent, vote for a minor party, and just see what can happen when you have independent voices going into Parliament, as I said, putting things forward, voting against things that aren't great, that aren't working. We just had child protection legislation get passed despite the stakeholders and a large number of members of Parliament stating it was flawed and opposing it. They couldn't stop it getting through because they didn't have the votes to help stop it. So the community need to stop and think, do not waste a vote this time. And if you're not happy with the way things are at the moment, vote totally different. Take a chance on a minor party, an independent, change that voting power that's currently in government. I've seen some of the good MPs in there work together and try hard.
There are a few good members of Parliament. There are a few good ones. But we need to be more conscious on the decisions we make. There's that old saying, there's no point complaining about things if you're not willing to make any sort of change, not one decisional change. Otherwise, you're just choosing the same thing over and over again. So,
and a vote costs nothing, doesn't take any extra effort. You're going in there, like just give it a go.
That's right.
Yeah.
And look at the track records. Look at the people who are up for re-election. Look at what they voted for and what they haven't stood for, and see where your values align too.
Yeah. And if you have to fight so hard and advocate so hard, and you know, I know some groups of people sending so many emails in to members of government or other members of parliament, and they're complaining that their emails aren't getting answered, they don't get a response, government won't back down on a decision, or someone else won't change something. If that's your experience, if you vote the same way that you did last time or the time before, you're going to get the
It's not going to
same.
change. It
So,
won't change if you keep the same vote.
yeah.
And the other thing I want to say, one more thing is, there's a tradition of people, an older generation, who believe, who might have been Labor supporters, like my parents in their generation. Labor Party isn't the same Labor Party it was years ago, and that's the same with the Liberal Party. Everything's changed. Even what we thought the Greens were, they're not the same as what they were years ago. So you need to be more aware, and give the minor parties a chance. There are good candidates out there, and good minor, good options out there. But I know I'm consistent. When I put my mind to something, I can be stubborn, but I will persevere and until I get my breakthrough.
And that's
That's
what
what
we
I know
want.
about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been able to work really well with some of the members of the Liberal Party on the child protection stuff and other matters, because child protection is not my only interest. Um, and I've certainly tried hard with the Labor Party. Um, so yeah, so heading into the election, kids will go back to school. I'm assuming that all the candidates will start ramping things up, because before we know it, the election will be here. So for anybody that wants to make contact with you to offer some kind of assistance, what I'll put the links in the YouTube description.
Yes.
Um, but what types of things would you perhaps be looking for if someone wanted to help you out?
Well, reach out first. I've got my own email address that I've set up. Plus, we have the Fair Go one, and on our website, we can put the links on there later on. People can contact us. How much time can you spare? And we don't want to ask for people who can't commit to. If you can commit to a couple of hours here and there, that's excellent. If you want to help volunteer, but we're probably the majority of our focus with volunteers will be closer to the election with the how to vote cards, or um, uh, meet and greets, or even if you could towards the end with polling booths, scrutineering, whatever it is, the team would have a different number of volunteer roles. And if you can help bring awareness, share our videos, look at our website, and we'll send you that link. I think maybe you spoke with Jake, so I don't know if he brought that up, but we could put the website in there. Contact Sarah's office if you like, as well. But the Fairgo website does have a contact form, and yeah. So if you can volunteer, um, let us know how much time you can volunteer, what you're willing to do, and just help share and get the information out there. Um, and if you have any questions and you want to talk to me as a candidate and you want to get to know who I am, you've got my email address. Go to my Facebook, my social media. My email address is there. Send me a direct email and we can meet up, have a coffee, and just chat, and see, how I align with you and if you vote for me as a public servant, how can I represent you? That's what I want to know, and how to go about it in your way, because I'm not going to, I don't have my own agenda that I'm going to be pouring out onto people. I listen to
I
everyone.
love that you referred to yourself as a public servant, because I met with a member of parliament not so long ago, and I just made the comment of, like, come on, these ministers work for the community. Essentially,
Yeah,
they work for us.
that's right.
And this member sort of said, "Oh, yeah, no, well, I don't know that I really see that we work for the people." And I thought, and there lies the problem. that's why it's so hard to get in to see that member, to meet with that member, to be heard by that member, and then get a response from the email because they
A
don't
lot of them seem
actually.
to worship status and
Yeah,
popularity
yeah,
and power and authority. They worship themselves
uh,
and the system. No, I'm a mum. I didn't want to be in this position, but I
yeah,
felt like I needed to step up because I want to see the changes.
yeah. Wonderful. Alrighty. So nice to meet you, Angela, and
Thank
to
you,
talk to
Lisa.
you. And yeah, people can they'll find the video shortly up on my YouTube channel. I'll also share it on my public Facebook page. You'll share it, and hopefully others will share it. And good luck.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for giving me a voice on your platform. I appreciate
Welcome.
it.
Thanks, Angela. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.